joining us now, the newly named counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Well, this is exciting and unexpected. How are you?
I'm great, Mika. Thank you for having me.
Tell us what went behind this decision. I know, you and I have spoken a little bit. Yes. There's a lot of factors at play.
I appreciated your counsel and your friendship throughout, Mika, and essentially my major concern is and will always be my 4 children, but I'm very convinced that this is a family-friendly West Wing and White House. I've seen Donald Trump up close and personal with his own children and his grandchildren, and certainly his 10-year-old son and his wife, and I know he is very pro-family. I've witnessed and I've heard firsthand the way he has treated women and men, frankly, in the Trump Corporation over a number of years. And I'm also just excited to work with the senior team that's already in place to support them how I can. It's a weighty responsibility, but if you have the president's ear and his trust, and you're honored and humbled enough to have this opportunity, I think it's very difficult to say no, and the president-elect is a very persuasive man.
What does he want your #1 priority to be?
He'd probably want my #1 priority to be what it has been, which is to be a more discreet advisor and somebody who helps him to effectively supports him in his effective connecting and communicating with America. I think nobody is the master, brilliant communicator and connector that he is. That's how he won his campaign. That's how he became president. So if I can support that, I will. But in addition to, I know in speaking about this role with Jared Kushner, he made an excellent point. He said, we'd like to tap into your considerable data and strategic and data background. So we'll see what ends up in the portfolio, and I'm there to support them however they need me to, and it could take on a number of different aspects, but I think essentially it will continue to be what it's been.
Can I just ask if John Bolton's mustache ruined his chances? You would know.
I wouldn't know that. I fear I'm not an expert on mustaches. I'm a Yankees fan, and they're not allowed to have facial hair.
Well, what about looking the part? Is that just what's going on here? And you know Trump. I know Trump. Is there something to this?
No, I think it's not fair to say that people are in or out based on how they look, or, quote, looking the part. I think it's being the part. Donald Trump knows that first and foremost. He looks like a very strong leader who speaks his mind and has an amazing, successful portfolio outside of politics, but in the end, he is that. He doesn't just look like that. So no, look, you wouldn't be Donald Trump, and you wouldn't be meeting with over 100 men and women at this point, Mika, dozens and dozens of people, only a fraction of whom will end up serving in your cabinet and in senior roles if you were concerned about that. So I think it's been a tremendous process that he's undertaken, and what's amazing to me is that he's met with over 100 people who are offering their advice and their counsel and their vision and their experiences, and yet he's still ahead of schedule from past administrations, Republican and Democrat. That's pretty remarkable. I mean, that's his energy.
Michael Steele, jump in.
Hey, Kelly, congratulations.
Yeah.
I can't think of anyone better for that. And your service in terms of this campaign has been underrated, by the way. I think what you've done is amazing. But to that point, you're now the counselor to the president. How do you see yourself navigating what will be some serious competing interest as this administration begins to take the ground and take the hill, if you will, that it needs to take legislatively as well as politically? How do you see yourself in between those two competing worlds?
That's a top priority, I would say, for all of us in the administration in the West Wing, Michael. It's a great question. I mean, we see many people trying to get in the president-elect's way even before he takes office, which is unfortunate. I think that's what the faithless electors nonsense was about. I think that's what these protests are about, and other folks in Hollywood and elsewhere are trying to get in his way. But we just have to do what we've done all along, which is focus and put our heads down, ignore the naysayers and critics, but recognize that this is a man who has said he will be the president to all Americans, even those who did not support him, even those who didn't vote, frankly. And so many of his policies are meant to help everyone. If you look at the child care and elder care tax credits that he and his daughter Ivanka Trump have talked about, if you look at his create 25 million jobs over 10 years and unleash energy investments, that's meant to help everyone. That stimulates the economy and projects economic growth, that it's a rising tide that lifts all boats. At the same time, I've seen him try to include people from very different backgrounds and very different viewpoints. And that's what leaders do. They don't shut folks out just because they disagree with them or didn't support them. And we've all seen, frankly, in this process through the transition, Michael, a president-elect who's brought in Democratic office holders, who's talked to them on the phone, who's gone down and gotten tremendous support from President Obama. And Mrs. Trump has gotten tremendous support from First Lady Michelle Obama. I think it's set a great tone, but I also think it sets a great content moving forward and passing some of this legislation.
Sam Stein, go ahead.
Kellyanne, congrats on the gig. Well deserved, as everyone has said here. We were talking earlier on the show about the attacks that took place in Berlin, and one of the questions that Joe and I think the rest of the panel were trying to just get our heads around. It's actually a two-part question. One is the Muslim ban that came in place after San Bernardino. Is that still operable, yes or no? And then the second thing is, if it's not and the policy is extreme vetting, can you walk us through what that actually means? What specific things are we talking about that aren't taking place now? Would a Trump administration apply to the vetting process?
Sure. Sam, so the president-elect many times during the campaign since the December San Bernardino attack of a year ago has really circumscribed what he had said from the previous December in explaining that it's really about extreme vetting. And that extreme vetting contemplates getting tougher with these countries that are known to train and harbor and indeed export terrorists. I mean, this is not complicated in terms of there are countries that are known to do that. We know that ISIS has also promised/threatened to, quote, blend in with refugees, Syrian and otherwise. We know that Germany now is added to the list with France and Italy and Belgium and, of course, the United States of America falling victim to these random attacks that are inspired by ISIS. And so you've got Hillary Clinton referring to them as our, quote, determined enemies in her convention speech, Donald Trump being willing to call them what they are to defeat them. And also, if you look at his plan, which is still on the website if everybody wants to pull it up, he also calls for a much more robust collaboration with many of our allies and even with countries that we don't work with that closely on a number of policy issues to come together and have a strength in numbers approach to defeating radical Islamic terrorism. ISIS is fairly new in terms of terrorism around the globe. It was created through the vacuum that was left and the way we came out of Iraq, frankly. And it's grown in strength. It is not retreating. It is not abating. Ask Germany. And also, I just think that having a president of the United States and a commander-in-chief who's willing to put this as a top priority and respond to the growing number of Americans who say they feel less safe over the last 4 to 8 years is a great start.
Ben Ginsberg.
Hello, Kellyanne. Congratulations.
Hi. Thank you.
It's always good to have a wily political operative as part of the White House mix. As you were talking with your role with the president-elect, what's the mix that you think you'll be taking on between long-term strategic issues and the sort of emergency firefight of the day?
I think anyone's portfolio includes some of that. I don't imagine that we'll be a White House that's immune to unforeseen circumstances and events. This happens every time. I've spoken with people who have had a role similar to this in previous administrations, Democratic and Republican, and it's an important balance. It's going in every day and focusing on what your portfolio is, what you are expected to do on behalf of the President of the United States, and at the same time being flexible and nimble enough to recognize that there will be times when you can't even do, you're taken off of that, and there are crises to deal with, or there are unforeseen circumstances that have popped up. But I mean, I know Donald Trump, and he's a leader who's able to be nimble and resilient. And just as politically speaking, all the times he was counted out, betting against Donald Trump is a real fool's errand, as everyone has come to realize. But even in addition to the politics, policy-wise, his consistency and his clarity on a number of issues really mattered, because I even ask people to this moment, what exactly was Hillary Clinton's message? And it's very difficult for people to answer that question. It's very easy for them to answer about Donald Trump. Right. So you take that and you make those a long-term strategic initiatives, and then you become nimble enough. And I think it's important to have a cohesive senior team that works together and knows that.
Kellyanne Conway, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mika.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you soon. Eddie, final thoughts this morning before we go to the
3
next
words
hour.
for 2017.
Yeah.
We need to imagine.
We need to imagine.
We need to
Those are
resist.
4.